Okay, so getting back into our coverage over the Age of Apocalypse storyline, we do pick back up once again with X-Men Chronicles. Now remember, when it comes to X-Men Chronicles, it's kind of like a prelude that leads into the whole idea of Age of Apocalypse for Marvel Comics, only X-Men comics. And let me explain why I say it's more like a prelude. Because in the early parts of Marvel Comics' work on X-Men Age of Apocalypse, they gave us X-Men Alpha. Now, X-Men Alpha is really important because it was the starting off point for the whole idea of us exploring a brand new timeline, a timeline where you had Apocalypse now be the ruler of North America. Now, remember, this whole idea, this brand new timeline, is coming out of Legion Quest. And when it came to Legion Quest, it was really more the idea of Legion going back in time to kill off Magneto. Because to Legion, he believed that if Magneto was not around, then Charles Xavier should have been able to achieve his lifelong goal, where mutants and humans are able to live together in harmony. The problem was that when you had Legion go back in time to kill off Magneto, he had killed off Charles Xavier instead on accident. And so with the death of Charles Xavier, it had brought in a brand new timeline. And with this brand new timeline, you had Apocalypse being able to take over North America. And really, like I said earlier, it all began with X-Men Alpha. But then you had Marvel give us all these different books that kind of help us explore the whole idea of the Age of Apocalypse universe. But at the tail end of this event, you did have Marvel give us, well, X-Men Chronicles. Now, when it came to Chronicles, it took place before X-Men Alpha to kind of help us explore the whole idea of Magneto in this brand new timeline. How you have Magneto be the one to form the X-Men. Because remember, when it came to Charles Xavier's death, before he had died, him and Magneto had agreed to work together to have mutants and humans live together in harmony to hopefully achieve that goal. But with the death of Charles Xavier, you have Magneto try his best to carry on that dream. But unfortunately, in this reality, humans are just like they are in most realities where they hate on the mutant race. And so with all the hatred and the fear towards the mutant race, you have Magneto say, you know what? Let me go ahead and give up for now and open up a school to allow young mutants to learn how to use their powers properly out there in the world. Now, when it came to X-Men Chronicles issue number 1, we had saw a character known as Nemesis go out of his way to, well, blow up the school of Magneto and kill off a bunch of mutants who were currently living there, including the Scarlet Witch. And so this took place right after you had Magneto and the X-Men being able to fight against Apocalypse, but also his horsemen as well. And after you had our heroes deal with that battle, they kind of felt confident about themselves until they had came back to their school and realized their school was attacked, but the Scarlet Witch was officially dead. And so that took place 5 years ago in X-Men Chronicles issue number 1. But when we jump into X-Men Chronicles issue number 2, it's been 5 years later. And so now we're getting into the whole idea of seeing Weapon X, because in this reality, Logan is not called Wolverine, he is called Weapon X. The name Wolverine belongs to a different character that we are going to meet in this video, but right now we're seeing Weapon X and Jean Grey leaving the X-Men. And the reason why, because there was a point in the timeline where you had Magneto leave Jean Grey behind at one of the camps of Apocalypse. And the thing was, Magneto was not really trying to go back for Jean Grey for unknown reasons. But you had Weapon X, Logan, go back on his own to go save Jean Grey. Now, he did lose a hand, but he felt like he had no choice but to go ahead and save her. And so because of that, it's him saying, I'm leaving and she's coming with me. So you do have Jean Grey and also Weapon X leave. Now, while they're leaving, two things happen. First, you have Jean Grey say, Magneto, this is not your fault. You knew sooner or later this was going to happen. You need to forgive yourself because sooner or later might convince Weapon X to come back to you and rejoin the X-Men. But his second thing is you have Rogue showing that she is very concerned for Magneto. And for Gambit, it does seem like he's trying his best to get her attention, to kind of help her realize that he is madly in love with her. But now we have to jump over to a different character known as Holocaust. Now, when it comes to Holocaust, he is the son of Apocalypse. Now, we have no idea who is his mother, but we do see Holocaust right now had just wrecked an entire city on his own, but now he's being confronted by another character, and that would be Wolverine, but not the Wolverine that you were thinking of, because this Wolverine was created by Dark Beast. Now, we have not officially met Dark Beast yet in this reality, but we do know that when it came to this character, Wolverine, his genetics was tinkered by Dark Beast to make him a very powerful character. Now, for Holocaust, he tells Wolverine, I have a mission for you, and that mission is, I want you to make Magneto suffer once again. And once I know that he is suffering, then I will kill him. Now, Holocaust is actually Nemesis from our last video who had killed off the Scarlet Witch. So something happened from that point at this point to turn Nemesis into Holocaust. But either way, it's him telling Wolverine, I need you to kill off Magneto's son. And once you have done that to make him suffer, then I will kill off Magneto. And so now we pick up a few days later, and we pick up with Magneto with the X-Men heading over to Denver, Colorado. Here's the reason why, because their main goal is to find a group of bandits to go ahead and get rid of them for causing trouble in this area. Now, you do have our heroes being able to find these bandits, but once they do, it's the book kind of now giving us the opportunity to look at almost every single member of the X-Men team that Magneto had put together. But you then have Wolverine appear. Now, when he does appear, he's hiding behind the scenes. And matter of fact, he does walk up on two of the bandits. Now, we learn here that for Wolverine, he has the ability to charge up other people with some type of energy to make them go berserk. And so you have Wolverine walk up on those two bandits, charge them up, and they go berserk to attack Magneto. Now, one of those bandits does have a knife that's not made out of metal. And so that knife cannot be stopped by Magneto nor by Rogue. Because remember, in this reality, Rogue, she did not absorb the powers of Miss Marvel. Instead, she had absorbed the powers of Polaris in this reality. And so either way, when it comes to Rogue, she sees the knife going towards Magneto. Now remember, she is very concerned for Magneto. This kind of builds the whole idea of the possibility of those two characters getting together. Now, once you have Magneto get stabbed by that knife, you have Gambit say, hey, listen, you know what? I am second in charge. It's time for us to go ahead and do a hard retreat so that Magneto is able to recover. And so once you have the X-Men go back to their base, you really do have Magneto express the idea that he does not love that Gambit had called a retreat, that the X-Men should have gone on without him to take down those bandits, because sooner or later, Magneto could possibly die. And if he does, the X-Men need to understand to keep going on without him if he does die. Now, for Gambit, he's kind of like, dude, listen, we need you in our corner if we are going to have the chance to stop Apocalypse. Now, for Gambit, when he walks away, before he walks away, he does try his best to get the attention of Rogue. Now, they're not dating yet, but it's him saying like, listen, I have feelings for you, and I'm going to show you I do by doing all these different things. But the problem is that you have Rogue ignore Gambit, because her main concern right now is Magneto. And she tells him like, hey, listen, let's talk later. Like, I want to sit here and talk to Magneto a tad bit more in a one-on-one conversation. But back in Denver, we do pick back up with Wolverine once again, and you have Wolverine being able to recruit a bunch of different people to follow him when it comes to heading over to the base of the X-Men to possibly kill off, well, Quicksilver. But now I kind of want to jump back over to Gambit because you have Gambit right now talking to Bobby Drake Iceman. And the reason why, because it's really more of Gambit trying his best to figure out how to tell Rogue how he truly feels about her. The whole idea that he does love her. And so it's really sweet here to see how much Gambit cares for this woman. Like, he is actually thinking about settling down with her. But the problem is that Gambit does not really realize that he is technically second fiddle when it comes to Magneto. And matter of fact, when we jump over to Rogue and Magneto, they're having this conversation where it's really more Magneto telling Rogue who inspired him to be the man he is today. The whole idea of Charles Xavier being that man who inspired Magneto to be a hero, to be a person, to fight for the mutant race, to stop evil mutants like Apocalypse, but to also try to achieve a goal that might not ever be achieved. But with all that being said, it's also now Magneto kind of thinking that he's a failure. And that right there is really important because he truly does believe that he is a failure, that the X-Men is a failed concept. But for Rogue, it's her saying like, no, it's not. And no matter what, we are going to be by your side to the very end. Now, we do get another page. We do see Wolverine getting closer and closer to finding the base of the X-Men to, hopefully do his mission that Holocaust had put him on. But then you have Rogue go over to where Quicksilver is at. Now, really, this is more Rogue kind of wondering, like, does Quicksilver still miss Wanda, the Scarlet Witch? Because she died back in X-Men Chronicles issue number 1. Which took place 5 years ago in this timeline. But she also died in front of Rogue. And so is Rogue kind of wondering like, hey, Quicksilver, do you still miss your sister? But at the same time, you have her asking like, do you think she would love the idea of me being second in command of the X-Men? And you have Quicksilver say yes to both. But when it comes to his second question, it's him saying like, the X-Men is going to expand sooner or later. And when it does, it's going to need multiple leaders to lead all these different teams when it comes to fighting against the forces of Apocalypse. And so right after he says that to her, you didn't have Gambit walk into the room. Now again, this is Gambit trying his best to express his love to Rogue, but you have Rogue just walk away. And the reason why, because she's heading right over to Magneto once again. And so you have Gambit ask Quicksilver, like, what can he do when it comes to Rogue? Like, what is wrong with her? And you have Quicksilver say, you should talk to my father. But hey, mind you, my father is currently training at the moment. And of course, this is a problem because Magneto should be resting right now after being injured in the last battle. But for Magneto, there's no time to rest. He must always be prepared. Now for Gambit, he does try his best to jump into the middle of the training session, but you have Magneto saying, dude, listen, if you want to talk to me after, but if you're going to jump into the middle of this session, you're going to also join the training session as well. Now, outside the base of the X-Men, we do pick up with, well, Wolverine and his forces. Now, they're waiting for the right moment to attack, but the problem is that, again, when it comes to Wolverine, he has the ability to charge up other people with some type of energy to make them go berserk. And so you have one of the guys wanting to go ahead and rush in to attack the X-Men to kill off, well, Magneto for Holocaust. But you do have Wolverine grab that guy, snap that guy's neck and say, we are not going to attack right now. We need to wait for the right moment to actually attack. So the rest of you guys better stay right here and listen to my plan very carefully. But when we jump back over to Gambit and also Magneto, the training session is done. It's now time for Gambit to have the ability to talk to Magneto about Rogue. But the problem is, like, For Magneto, he does not know how to tell Gambit how he feels about Rogue as well. But the thing is, while you have the two guys talking to one another, Rogue does reappear once again. Now, when she does reappear once again, she does ask to have a one-on-one conversation with Magneto. And so you do have Gambit leave, but the man is still hoping to have that conversation with Rogue about the idea of him loving her. And so this kind of goes back into the whole idea of Rogue not really being able to touch other people because, again, her ability to take their powers away with skin-to-skin contact. But it's Magneto saying, you have the powers of Polaris, so let me show you do the powers of Polaris that could actually help you to touch and hug and kiss other people. Like, for example, putting a biomagnetic shield around you, which will allow you to actually touch other people. And so you have Magneto do that and being able to touch her arm, her hand, her face, and kind of shows that these two characters are kind of in love with one another. But while they're touching each other, Gambit is there. He's watching everything, and he realized that he lost the woman he loved so much to supposedly his close friend, his best friend, Magneto. And so you do have Gambit express his anger of the whole idea of not being able to kiss Rogue, to be with Rogue, to see Magneto be that person with Rogue. Now, Magneto and Rogue did not really kiss here, but again, the way they were touching, it kind of shows like, hey, these two characters are in love with one another. And so you do have Gambit express his anger of the whole idea of what happened between them. But then the alarms goes off because, well, Wolverine and his forces are attacking. And so you do have Rogue and Magneto leave. But right after leaving, for Gambit, it's more of sooner or later Rogue is going to have to pick Magneto or him. Now, when Rogue and Magneto arrive to help out the rest of the X-Men to fight against the forces of Wolverine, you have the rest of the X-Men tell Magneto and Rogue there's no need for help because technically these guys are just regular humans who had just gone berserk, and that's really it. So for Magneto, it's a perfect time to talk, but they can't, and the reason why, because of Wolverine. He comes behind Magneto and slashes him right in the back. Now again, for Wolverine, his main goal is to not kill off Magneto. His main goal is to kill off Quicksilver, to make Magneto suffer. But then he realized that, you know what? Magneto is in love with Rogue. So why not kill off Rogue to make him suffer in a different type of way? Now you do have Gambit try his best to jump into the battle, but unfortunately for Gambit, he's not that strong to fight against, well, Wolverine. And so you then have Magneto try to also rejoin the battle as well. And the rest of the book does kind of end on a quick note here because, okay, you do have the rest of the X-Men show up to fight against Wolverine. The problem is that they're not strong enough to fight against Wolverine. So it's a one-man army being able to take down the rest of the X-Men on his own. Now, for Wolverine, he does tell Rogue that, hey, I'm not going to kill off Magneto, but I am going to kill you off to make the man suffer. Now, luckily for Rogue and also Magneto, you do have Gambit being able to sneak up on Wolverine, to use his powers to charge up the belt on Wolverine's body. And so once he does that, you then have Gambit being able to push Wolverine off the cliff, and that belt does explode, and we're kind of left to believe that Wolverine is officially dead. And matter of fact, he is, because we don't see him ever again in the rest of Age of Apocalypse. But right after you have our heroes win, you have Gambit realize that he can't stay here anymore. He can't be part of the X-Men because he now knows that Rogue is in love with Magneto. And so this is Gambit leaving the X-Men and leads into the rest of Age of Apocalypse.